Most people quit at 80%. They put in the work. They build the momentum. They survive the boring middle. But just before the breakthrough, they stop. Not because they're weak, but because they've never trained for the final wall. The final 20% is a different battlefield. It's not physical. It's not even strategic. It's psychological. It's the invisible line where doubt creeps in, where results lag, where your mind starts negotiating with your mission. Napoleon Hill warned us. More gold has been mined from the thoughts of men than has been taken from the earth. But most people never dig deep enough to find it. They dig. And dig. And when they're inches away, they leave. Not because they're far, but because they're fatigued. You must decide. Will you be like most people? Or will you become the kind of person who pushes through the final wall? This is where everything changes. Because the truth is, the last 20% isn't about energy. It's about identity. You already know how to start. You've proven you can build momentum. You've even shown up through resistance. But finishing? Finishing is a decision. And that decision often comes when everything feels slow, unseen, pointless. That's where the wall appears. Not because you're off track, but because you're finally close enough to become someone new. The wall is your signal, not your enemy. It shows up when the goal becomes real, when the future gets loud, when your excuses run out. And in that silence, most people panic. They interpret stillness as failure. They mistake fatigue for finality. But not you. Because you're learning to recognize the wall for what it is. An invitation. An invitation to prove that what you said matters more than how you feel. That who you're becoming matters more than where you came from. This is where most quit. And this is where you begin. Let's break it down. The 80% mark often looks like this. You've put in time. You've invested energy. You've gotten past the distractions. But now, results are slower. Excitement has faded. You're alone with the process. There's no applause. No accountability. Just you and a choice. That's where greatness is decided. Not in the first chapter, but in the quiet final stretch. This is what he'll call definiteness of purpose. The ability to lock into something so deeply that temporary delay doesn't discourage you. Most people never build that muscle. They depend on motivation, on feedback, on frictionless momentum. But when all that fades, they flinch. They doubt. They quit. Even if they're only one step away. So here's the truth. The people who make it through the final 20% aren't superhuman. They're simply willing to keep going when others stop. They've trained themselves to push past the internal resistance, to sit with the silence, to keep showing up when it's no longer fun. And in that space, they unlock something most will never know. They find their edge. They finish what others only start. They cross the invisible line between average and exceptional. That's the wall. And you're staring at it right now. So don't turn back. Don't retreat too easy. Don't recycle another beginning. Lean in. Press through. Because everything you've built up to this point means nothing if you stop here. But everything changes if you break through. Welcome to the final 20%. It's where legends are made. And you're just getting started. You've made it to the 80% mark. That means you've already done more than most. You've overcome the hardest first step. You've outrun the early noise. You've proven you can persist through the middle. But how do you know you're actually there? Because it doesn't look like a wall. It feels like apathy. It feels like wondering why this even matters anymore. It feels like convincing yourself that finishing might not be worth it after all. This is the trap. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, you'll label it burnout, or boredom, or bad timing. But really, it's just proximity to your next level. When you're near the top, the climb always gets quieter. The progress gets smaller. The wins get slower. And your mind starts whispering exit plans. That's how the 80% mark hides itself. Not as pain, but as the absence of progress. You don't see a finish line. You just see more steps, more repetition, more of the same. And that sameness starts to feel heavy. Not because it's too hard, but because you expected it to be over by now. Expectation is the true enemy at 80%. You expected faster results, more recognition, more obvious success. But what you get is a hallway with no doors. You walk, and walk, and nothing changes. That's when most people leave. Not because they've failed, but because they assumed it wasn't working. They confused silence for error. They mistook the pause for a problem. But silence is not the enemy. It is the signal. You are nearing the final test. The part where finishing becomes identity. Where your actions aren't fueled by excitement, but by decision. Napoleon Hill called this moment decision backed by desire. He knew that people lose momentum not from weakness, but from vague intention. If your desire is shallow, the silence will always defeat you. But if your desire is deep-rooted in purpose, in principle, in identity, then silence becomes your signal to double down. So how do you know you're at the 80% point? Here are the signs. You've stopped talking about it. You're no longer excited. You've thought about changing the plan. You've considered starting something else. You feel stuck, but not in crisis, just in fog. That's it. That's the fog of 80%. And here's the key. The fog is not failure. The fog is the final doorway. It's the last resistance your brain throws at you before it lets go of your old identity. Because make no mistake, finishing changes who you are. It forces you to say, I don't just begin things. I finish them. And that's terrifying to your old self. Your old self was used to the thrill of beginning, the rush of planning, the novelty of action. But finishing? That's a rebirth. That's a commitment. That's a complete shedding of almost. And your mind knows it. That's why it resists. So if you're in the fog right now, feeling slow, unsure, unclear, you're not lost. You're on schedule. This is the part where most people quit. Not with a bang, but with a soft, almost invisible retreat. They slowly let go. They stop doing the reps. They miss one day, then another. They tell themselves they'll circle back. But they never do. You can. You can recognize this fog for what it is. A test of whether your vision was just fantasy, or whether it's forged deep enough to finish. And if it is, you don't need motivation. You just need rhythm. You don't need results. You just need reminders. You don't need applause. You just need alignment. This is how the last 20% is conquered. Not by inspiration, but by decision. And you've already proven you can walk this far. Don't let the fog rob you of the summit. You are close. Closer than you think. Let your consistency carry you where excitement no longer can. Let your identity speak louder than your feelings. Let your finish be the proof that fog is not the end. It's the invitation. So you've spotted the fog. You know you're at 80%. Now the question becomes, how do you push through the final 20? Because here's the truth. You can't rely on willpower here. You can't wait for inspiration. You need a system. A system that protects your progress when your energy dips. A system that keeps you moving forward when emotion fades. Napoleon Hill taught that success is the result of deliberate action, built on a definite plan, driven by a burning desire. Now it's time to build your plan. Let's begin with the first principle. Reduce the number of decisions. At 80%, decision fatigue is real. You don't need new options. You need structure. You need to know what time you work, where you work, what the first step is, and what comes next. Ambiguity is your enemy in the final 20%. Clarity is your armor. So start here. Build a repeatable block of time where your brain doesn't have to negotiate. Example, every weekday, from 7 to 9, you work. No questions. No debate. Just rhythm. Which leads to the second principle. Protect the rhythm at all costs. Rhythm is what carries you when inspiration leaves. It's what tells your brain, we do this regardless of how we feel. And once that rhythm is locked, it begins to carry you. Not because it's easy, but because it's expected. You no longer try to finish. You show up to finish. Because that's who you are now. Third principle. Track visible proof. At this stage, your brain is desperate for results. But the results may still be invisible. So give your brain a win it can see. Track check marks. Log your hours. Tally reps. Mark the days. Not because they're the goal, but because they're the proof. Proof that you're not drifting. Proof that you're still walking. Proof that progress is happening even when it doesn't feel like it. Napoleon Hill taught that the subconscious responds to repetition. The more you affirm and act, the more your identity rewires. So let those daily marks become part of your mind's new blueprint. I am a finisher. I am consistent. I keep showing up. That leads to principle 4. Connect daily action to identity, not outcome. At 80%, outcomes are quiet. But identity speaks loud. Every time you act from discipline, you reinforce the belief that you're the kind of person who finishes. You don't need a trophy to feel it. You just need to follow through. That is where the power lives. Because if your actions depend on results, you'll quit when they stall. But if your actions are rooted in identity, you'll keep moving, even when nothing's moving around you. Now, let's lock it in with principle 5. Install non-negotiable rituals. Not optional routines. Not things you do when you feel good. Non-negotiables. Things that happen no matter what. Maybe it's journaling your next 3 tasks every night. Maybe it's starting your day with 5 minutes of silence and intent. Maybe it's reviewing your weekly plan every Sunday. These are not luxuries. They're anchors. Because when your mind begins to waver, these rituals remind it what to return to. You are building a base so solid, even doubt has no room to sit down. And here's the final piece of the system. Make quitting cost something. Most people quit quietly. They fade out without accountability. But what if quitting meant explaining it out loud? To someone who believes in you. To someone who expects your finish. Build that into your system. Tell someone your deadline. Post it on your wall. Write yourself a letter to read the day you feel like quitting. Let there be a cost to stopping. Not guilt, but gravity. Because gravity keeps things grounded. And grounded people don't drift. So here's your system. Reduce decisions. Protect rhythm. Track proof. Act from identity. Install rituals. Make quitting visible. This is not just strategy. This is structure. This is scaffolding for your final 20%. It won't make things easier, but it will make quitting harder. And that's what you need right now. A frame strong enough to carry you when your feelings try to talk you down. Most people never build this. They depend on mood. They chase new plans. They hope for motivation. But you? You're building a system that walks you through the wall. And on the other side? Is the version of you that doesn't stop? Let's meet them. You've built the system. You've locked in the rituals. You're walking with rhythm even through resistance. But now comes the moment most systems can't protect you from. The mental whisper that says, "It's not working." This is not just doubt. It's fatigue speaking. The kind that doesn't scream, it sighs. And in that sigh, dreams fade. Unless you know how to speak back. This is the chapter of inner conversation. Because most people don't quit from pain. They quit from silence. And now, it's time to teach your mind what to say when the noise is gone. Let's begin here. Fatigue speaks in first person. It doesn't say, "This might not work." It says, "I can't keep doing this." It doesn't say, "Maybe you should slow down." It says, "You're not cut out for this." This is the voice of the 80% wall. Subtle. Personal. Plausible. And if you don't learn to talk back, you'll agree with a lie. So here's the shift. You must build a vocabulary for the final 20%. Not the same affirmations you use at the start. Not the same excitement you had in week 1. New language. Stronger language. Language built for war. Let's craft it. When your mind says, "You're not seeing progress," you say, "Progress is happening beneath the surface. I trust the process, not the pace. I measure momentum by what I finish, not what I feel." When your mind says, "No one notices this. Why bother?" you say, "Discipline is the reward. I'm not doing this for them, I'm doing it for who I become." When your mind says, "You've already done enough. Take a break," you say, "I'm not chasing relief, I'm becoming resilient. I finish what I start. That's who I am now." This isn't toxic positivity. It's tactical self-preservation. You are not trying to fake confidence. You are choosing to feed courage. Napoleon Hill said, "Our only limitations are those we set up in our own minds." And the most dangerous limitation? An unchecked thought at the 80% mark. That's when your brain needs a leader, not a negotiator. You must lead your mind. Direct it. Reframe it. Repeat truth until it overrides fatigue. So here's your toolkit. 1. Script 3 truths about who you are becoming. Example. I am someone who follows through. I stay when others leave. I finish even in the fog. 2. Speak them out loud when the whispers begin. Yes, out loud. Because volume breaks mental patterns. 3. Design a wall response ritual. This could be a handwritten note, a recorded voice message to yourself, or a single phrase on your phone's lock screen. Make it automatic. Make it emotional. Make it louder than your doubt. And here's what happens over time. Your mind begins to believe the new script. Not instantly. Not perfectly. But consistently. And consistency changes chemistry. You are not trying to overpower your old thoughts. You are starving them by feeding the new ones every single day. And eventually, fatigue gets quieter. Resistance softens. The voice that used to talk you out of things now talks you through them. Because now, it sounds like you. Your new self. Your final 20% self. Your finisher self. This is where most people lose the battle. Not in action. In attention. They give too much airtime to the wrong voice. But not you. You are now the gatekeeper. The architect of your internal language. You don't just do hard things. You narrate them with truth. You don't just keep walking. You remind yourself why. You don't wait to feel better. You speak better. And eventually, you finish. Not because it got easier, but because your language got louder than your limits. There comes a moment in every journey where turning back feels logical. You've already come so far. You've invested so much. And yet, the finish line still feels distant. This is when most people convince themselves that quitting isn't failure. It's just a redirection. It wasn't meant to be. At least I tried. But here's the truth. You didn't come this far just to come this far. You didn't pour time, energy, and identity into something, only to bury it inches before breakthrough. This is where you connect to your history. To everything it cost you to get here. To the late nights. The quiet sacrifices. The missed comforts. The decisions that others didn't see. You remember the days where showing up took everything. You remember when no one clapped, but you kept building. You remember when momentum was built in silence. And now, you're thinking of walking away? No. Because what's behind you is too expensive to waste. And what's ahead of you is too valuable to abandon. This is when you draw the line. You say, I'm not retreating. I'm advancing slowly. You remind yourself, pain is part of the process. Doubt is part of the process. Silence is part of the process. But quitting? That erases the process. You didn't get this far on luck. You got here on rhythm, on discipline, on identity. And none of that was accidental. So now is not the time to question your path. Now is the time to honor it. Honor the hours you put in. Honor the decisions you've made. Honor the version of you who started this in the first place. That version would be furious if you quit now. They gave you this shot. They brought you this far. You owe them a finish. Napoleon Hill wrote, persistence is the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. And here's the real test. Faith is hardest when it's closest to fulfillment. Not when you begin, but when you're almost there. When everything slows, and silence fills the air. That's when faith has to become louder than facts. The fact is, you're tired. But the truth is, you're ready. The fact is, you don't see results. But the truth is, they're being built beneath the surface. The fact is, it feels like you're moving in circles. But the truth is, you're circling the summit. So don't mistake fatigue for failure. Don't confuse slow progress with stuckness. You're not stuck. You're steady. You're not failing. You're finishing. You're not behind. You're becoming. And what you're becoming cannot be undone by a hard week. Cannot be erased by one foggy morning. Because your history proves otherwise. Look back. Look at how far you've come. Look at what you used to settle for. Look at what you used to excuse. Look at how many times you would have quit in the past. But this time, you stayed. That's proof. You're already different. You're already stronger. You're already becoming what most people never dare to reach. So now, you walk with your history. You walk with the memories of past effort. With the echoes of every early morning. With the weight of every "I'll keep going" that no one else heard. Because all of that brought you here. And now, you give it meaning. By finishing. You carry your past into the finish line. Not as a burden, but as a banner. A reminder that you never quit. A reminder that you kept going when it didn't make sense. A reminder that you don't need applause. You need alignment. And you are aligned now. With discipline. With desire. With destiny. So don't pause. Don't pivot. Don't make your past a graveyard of almost. Make it the foundation of a finish. Because once you finish, your history becomes legacy. And you were born to finish what you begin. Sometimes the wall isn't loud. It doesn't come with a breakdown or an obvious struggle. It arrives quietly. In the form of slow progress. Days begin to blend. Effort feels invisible. You keep showing up, but nothing seems to move. This is the illusion of stagnation. And it's one of the most dangerous places to be. Because when progress feels too slow, most people assume they're off track. But what if the slowness wasn't failure? What if it was evidence that you're building something lasting? This is where endurance meets mindset. This is where faith outpaces feelings. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Patience, persistence, and perspiration make an unbeatable combination for success." That quote wasn't for beginners. It was for people like you. People in the deep middle. People who already know the plan. People who are still walking when the music has stopped. So let's break the illusion. Progress does not always announce itself. Sometimes the greatest growth is happening in silence. Muscle builds during rest. Crops grow underground. Storms shape mountains without a sound. You are becoming stronger than before. Even if the scale doesn't move. Even if the numbers don't spike. Even if the world doesn't notice. Here's the first truth to hold on to. Progress is not always visible, but it is always building. If you show up every day, do the work, keep your system alive, you are winning. Even if the win looks like repetition. Second truth. Speed is not the same as significance. Finishing fast is not the goal. Finishing with strength is. Finishing with integrity. Finishing with the version of yourself you set out to become. Would you rather get there quickly? Or get there as someone unshakable? The final 20% asks this question. And your answer builds the outcome. Third truth. The plateau is part of the climb. Every mountain has flat parts. Moments where the slope softens. Where you feel like nothing is happening. But it is. You're adapting. You're reinforcing. You're stabilizing the very traits that will carry you through the final steps. Now, here's the mistake most people make in this phase. They change the plan. They chase novelty. They abandon consistency. They assume something's broken. But nothing is broken. You're simply in the long stretch. And the long stretch is not where you make adjustments. It's where you anchor deeper. You say, I trust my system. I believe in my strategy. I am patient enough to wait while the seeds grow. This is called mental endurance. Not just the ability to keep going physically, but the ability to think clearly when the results go quiet. You build this by rehearsing truth. Every morning. Review your why. Review your commitment. Review your identity. You don't need fireworks. You need reminders. Because your brain will try to rewrite the story when it gets bored. It will whisper. This isn't working. This should be easier by now. Maybe you're not made for this. And you respond. I don't grow by speed, I grow by showing up. I don't quit in the quiet, I move with purpose through it. I've walked too far to let silence stop me. This is where most people mistake boredom for failure. But boredom is just the absence of surprise. You don't need surprise. You need structure. You don't need more dopamine. You need discipline. And discipline is what survives long after the excitement fades. So today, walk. Even if the view hasn't changed. Even if the numbers stay still. Even if no one sees it. Because you see it. You know what you're building. You know what you're becoming. This is not stagnation. This is solidification. You're no longer proving it works. You're proving you work. And that proof will outlive every dip. Every delay. Every doubting thought. So when it gets slow, don't shift. Don't shrink. Stand tall. Stay steady. You are building momentum in the shadows. And soon, that momentum will break through the surface. But for now, keep walking. Even quietly. Even slowly. Even alone. Because silence is not your enemy. It's your training ground. What happens when there is no feedback? No applause. No comments. No metrics moving. Just you. And the work. This is the moment that separates amateurs from professionals. Because amateurs need noise. Professionals create rhythm. If your progress depends on praise, you'll always be at the mercy of others. But if you can continue when no one notices, you unlock something most people never find. Self-generated momentum. This chapter is about building your own fuel. Let's start with a truth that most ignore. Feedback is a luxury, not a requirement. When you first start something, feedback helps. It teaches. It affirms. It corrects. But at the final 20%, the feedback fades. Why? Because the finish line is yours, not theirs. No one else sees how close you are. No one else feels how heavy it's become. No one else carries the cost of quitting. So stop waiting for permission to continue. Stop waiting for someone to clap. Clap for yourself. Say, I'm still here. I'm still moving. I am my own proof. Let's get tactical. Here's how to build fuel when nothing is fueling you. 1. Celebrate invisible wins. You didn't skip today's work. You fought through boredom. You chose the plan over the impulse. That's a win. Even if no one saw it. Even if the world doesn't reward it. 2. Review your personal growth. Ask yourself, what do I tolerate now that I couldn't last year? What do I handle now without drama? What mindset do I live with that used to feel impossible? That's feedback. It's just internal. And sometimes internal feedback is the loudest kind. 3. Install a resistance log. Each time you want to quit, write it down. Note what triggered it. Note what you told yourself. Note how you overcame it. This becomes your archive of strength. A personal documentary of every battle you survived. And on the days where it feels impossible, you read it. You remind yourself, I've been here before. And I walked through. 4. Flip the silence. Instead of saying, no one notices this, say, good. This is mine. This isn't for likes. This is for legacy. Silence is not your enemy. It's your amplifier. Because when you succeed in silence, you know it's real. You know it's earned. 5. Build ritualized reflection. Every Sunday, reflect. What did I follow through on? What did I overcome? What do I want to double down on next week? Do not let 7 days pass without recording your grind. Because memory fades. But records stay. And those records become belief. Now, here's the most important mindset shift. You don't need feedback to keep going. You need memory. Memory of your why. Memory of your original fire. Memory of who you said you would become. And if that memory is strong enough, it becomes vision. Napoleon Hill called this definiteness of purpose. Not feedback, not attention, but an internal target that drives external behavior. When your vision is strong, the absence of applause doesn't slow you. It sharpens you. Because now it's personal. Now you're not performing. You're building. Quietly. Deliberately. Unshakably. Let the silence sharpen your aim. Let the lack of noise anchor your rhythm. Let every unnoticed rep become one more thread in the identity you're weaving. Because here's what you'll find. The longer you keep moving without praise, the less you need it. And one day, when the results finally arrive, you'll realize you didn't need validation. You needed vision. And that vision carried you farther than applause ever could. You're still grinding, still walking, still building. And then you see it. Someone else finishes before you. They're celebrating. They're visible. They've crossed a finish line that still feels far away to you. And without warning, doubt creeps in. Am I behind? Did I take the wrong path? Should I switch lanes? Comparison is the thief of persistence. Because it doesn't steal your ability. It steals your clarity. This is the chapter where you reclaim your lane. Let's begin with a universal truth. Your journey has a different clock. Just because someone arrived first does not mean you failed. It just means their destination was ready before yours. Imagine baking a cake. You put it in the oven. 10 minutes later, someone else pulls their cake out perfect, fluffy, golden. Would you yank yours out early just to match their timing? No. Because your recipe needs more time, more heat, more depth. Pull it out too soon, and you ruin what could have been rich. The same goes for you. You are not late. You are cooking. Napoleon Hill said, "The man who does more than he is paid for will soon be paid for more than he does." In other words, keep building. Even if no one's looking. Even if someone else got there first. Because what you're building might be 10 times deeper. 10 times more enduring. Comparison turns vision into static. It blurs your why. It distorts your timeline. So what do you do when others succeed before you? You re-anchor. Let's build that anchor now. 1. Review your original contract with yourself. Why did you start this? What did you commit to? What kind of person did you want to become? Other people's wins don't cancel your vows. 2. Reframe their success. Don't say, "Why not me?" Say, "If them, then it's possible." Say, "Proof that finishing is real." Use it as evidence, not as comparison. Their journey isn't your measurement. It's just a marker on the path. 3. Look backward instead of sideways. You're not where they are. But you're not where you were either. Measure your growth by who you used to be. How do you handle stress now? How do you speak to yourself now? How consistent have you become? That's progress. That's real. 4. Set blinders for key phases. There are moments when comparison is most toxic. Usually around milestones. When you're almost done. When the end feels just out of reach. In those moments, go dark. Turn off the feed. Protect your mental bandwidth. You don't need more input. You need more intention. 5. Speak your own name louder than theirs. Say, "This is my lane. This is my time. This is my version of success." Comparison fades when identity sharpens. This isn't arrogance. It's alignment. When you know who you are, you don't flinch when someone else shines. You clap. And you keep walking. Because you know You're about to shine too. It's just not your spotlight yet. But it's coming. And when it arrives, you'll be glad you didn't switch lanes. Didn't speed up to match their rhythm. Didn't question your path. You stayed. You matured. You finished. And that finish will feel earned. Will feel built. Will feel exactly on time. So the next time someone else crosses the line before you, clap. Not because you envy them, but because you remember. You're on your own lap. Your own race. Your own mission. And nothing, absolutely nothing, can delay what's yours. When you keep going. Right when you're close. When you're deep in the final stretch. That's when the escape doors appear. Suddenly, everything else looks easier. Maybe it's a new project. Maybe it's a distraction dressed as productivity. Maybe it's a reset plan that promises quicker wins. This is not coincidence. It's resistance wearing a friendly face. The closer you get to finishing, the louder the escape options become. This chapter is about seeing them for what they are and shutting them down. Let's call it what it is. Elegant quitting. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not even called quitting. It sounds like, I'm pivoting. I think my goals have changed. This is just not aligned anymore. But here's the truth. It's not evolution. It's evasion. It's the mind looking for relief. Because progress got heavy. And if you don't recognize it, you'll justify it. You'll build stories around your exit. You'll dress it up in wisdom and logic. But beneath all of it is fear. Fear of not being good enough to finish. Fear of being seen trying hard with no results. Fear of realizing how close you actually were. So the brain creates an out. A new idea. A fresh start. A cleaner canvas. And it feels so right. Because starting is always easier than staying. But starting again is not always brave. Sometimes it's just disguised retreat. Napoleon Hill wrote, "A quitter never wins and a winner never quits." There is no exception clause. You win because you cross the finish line, not because you decorate the path. So how do you shut the escape doors? You expose them. Let's walk through a few of the most seductive ones. 1. The shiny new thing. This new idea just feels more aligned. Of course it does. It's untested. It hasn't asked anything of you yet. But the moment you invest, it will reveal its own 80% wall. And then what? Another switch? Success doesn't come from new paths. It comes from seeing old ones through. 2. The productive distraction. I just need to clean up my systems first. I'm going to optimize my routine before I go further. These sound noble. But most of the time, they are resistance in disguise. Fixing the engine is useful. But not if you keep pulling the car over every mile. Sometimes you just need to drive. 3. The wiser self-narrative. I've grown, and this goal no longer serves me. Maybe. But ask yourself, is it really wisdom? Or is it weariness? Are you truly evolving away from the goal? Or are you exhausted by how long it's taken? 4. The burnout bluff. I'm just tired. I'll come back later. Be careful. Most people don't come back. They intend to. But momentum dies in the pause. If you need rest, rest. But plan the return like your life depends on it. Now that we've exposed them, here's how to fight back. Create a finish-only contract. Say, no matter how I feel, I don't abandon this until I finish. You can adjust the pace. You can shift the environment. But the goal stays. Rehearse future regret. Ask yourself, how will it feel 1 year from now? Knowing you stopped 10 feet from the summit? Feel that. Let it burn. Because future regret is more powerful than present discomfort. Limit external influence. In the final 20%, stop taking advice from everyone. Too many voices invite too many exits. Simplify your input. Trust your plan. Filter your circle. Remind yourself who you were when you began. That person had fire. That person had vision. That person saw this finish before anyone else did. Don't betray that version of you. You owe them a result. Here's your final weapon. Tell someone. Say, I'm close. I'm tempted to quit. Don't let me. Speak it out loud. Because silence gives resistance more room to breathe. But once it's spoken, it loses power. So today, name the escape doors. Lock them shut. Choose your identity over your impulse. Because finishing is not a matter of speed. It's a matter of commitment. And you are not a quitter with good excuses. You are a closer with unfinished proof. Let's finish. Finishing requires more than discipline. It requires vision you can touch. You need to see the end. Not just as a concept, but as a scene. A scene so vivid you can feel it pulling you forward. This is the power of finish line visualization. Not imagination. Not daydreaming. Execution-grade imagery. In this chapter, we build mental cinema that fuels action. Because action without direction leads to burnout. But action backed by vision? That becomes unstoppable. Let's start with the most important idea. Your brain follows the pictures you give it. If you give it images of quitting, it will find reasons to ease up. If you give it images of finishing, it will hunt for ways to make it happen. So let's give it the right movie. Close your eyes. Picture yourself crossing the finish. Where are you? What are you wearing? Who's there? What song is playing? What does your face look like? Now, what did it cost you to get there? Feel the tension in your chest, the pride in your bones, the heat behind your eyes. Let it hit you. That's not fantasy. That's fuel. Because every finish is built twice. First in your mind, then in your muscle. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." But here's the key. Conceiving is not casual. It's intentional. It's active. It's a workout. So build a ritual. Visualize your finish every morning. Just 5 minutes. Eyes closed. Head still. Heart locked in. See yourself rising after resistance. See the last rep. The final sentence. The closing breath. See your future self saying, I did it. That version of you already exists. But only if you keep building. Now bring it into the body. Don't just see it. Walk it. Move through your day as if it's already done. Ask, how would the finisher version of me show up right now? How would they walk into this room? How would they respond to this delay? Let that image guide your behavior. That's called identity-driven execution. You are no longer acting like the trying version of you. You are acting like the finished version. This is where things shift. You stop chasing goals and start behaving like the version of you who already owns them. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is train it until you become it. And that version of you? They don't rely on motivation. They rely on clarity. They rely on standards. They rely on execution. So now, let's make this real. Create your finish line script. Write it out. Where will you be when this is done? What will success look like in 5 specific details? How will you feel? Who will you thank? What will you whisper to yourself alone in that room? Keep that script in your pocket. Read it before the hardest task. Read it when you feel like quitting. Read it when the noise outside gets loud. Because nothing quiets distraction. Like a finish line you can already smell. And here's the action move. Tie every task to that outcome. Before you begin a work session, say, "This is the rep that makes that finish real." You are no longer just writing. You're writing the scene that lives in your head. You are no longer just building. You're assembling the vision that's already alive in your memory. Let every task become sacred. Let every rep become prophecy. Because if you repeat it enough, the mind begins to obey. And once the mind obeys, the body follows. The calendar follows. The world follows. This is how you finish. By seeing it first. By believing it with every breath. By tying every small act to something bigger. So the next time you doubt, don't just remind yourself of your goal. Replay the scene. You crossing the line. You dropping the final brick. You smiling through the tears. And then say, "This rep moves me closer." Because it does. And with enough reps, that scene becomes your story. That finish becomes your legacy. And you become the one who never stopped. You finished once. Now what? You don't want a one-time win. You want a pattern. Because real power isn't found in a single breakthrough. It's found in repetition. In the ability to make finishing normal. In this chapter, we turn completion into a lifestyle. Let's start with a mindset shift. Finishing is not a peak moment. It's a practiced identity. Most people treat completion like a special event. Like something rare. But finishers? They train it daily. Not just on big projects. On small ones. Micro ones. Invisible ones. Because how you finish anything is how you eventually finish everything. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Success comes to those who become success conscious." That means finishing isn't an act. It's a consciousness. So how do you install that consciousness? Here's how. 1. Build daily finish lines. Every day, set one thing. One meaningful task. That you must finish. It doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be deliberate. This anchors identity. You don't say, "I had a productive day." You say, "I completed my standard." One finish per day. Compounded. Becomes unstoppable momentum. 2. Log completions, not efforts. Don't just track what you worked on. Track what you closed. There's a psychological win in crossing something off. In saying, "This is done." Completion creates identity. Even if it's small. Let your brain see the finish. 3. Don't let energy define execution. Finishers work tired. Finishers ship when it's not perfect. Finishers move without applause. This is the difference between starters and closers. Starters wait for feeling. Closers move on standards. So decide now. Do you need to feel it? Or do you need to finish it? 4. Turn rituals into rhythms. What do you always finish? Your coffee? Your morning run? Your journaling? Expand it. Build identity around repetition. Say, "I always finish what I begin." I'm the kind of person who completes things. This is not ego. This is alignment. 5. Practice finishing boring things. Don't just wait for passion. Wash the dishes. Close the tab. Reply to the email. Every small closure builds your finish muscle. And that muscle? It carries into your mission. Now, let's talk mindset triggers. There are 3 you need to install. Trigger 1, the one push rule. When you feel like stopping, push one more time. One more sentence. One more rep. One more breath. That single push teaches your body that it doesn't die in discomfort. Trigger 2, the visual finish cue. Keep a physical object near you. A red pen. A closed notebook. A done card. When you complete a task, mark it. See it. Feel it. This links action to celebration. Trigger 3, the verbal close. Say it out loud. I'm done. This is finished. I kept my promise. Let your nervous system register the win. You don't need external praise. You need internal signals. Finishing isn't glamorous. It's gritty. It's quiet. It's personal. But the more you normalize it, the more unstoppable you become. You become the person who finishes. Without drama. Without delay. Without doubt. And that identity becomes your leverage. Because here's the truth. Discipline gets you to the task. But finishing transforms you. Every time you finish, you break an old pattern. You declare a new standard. You rewire your self-belief. You go from someone who tries to someone who delivers. From maybe to done. And when finishing becomes a habit, so does winning. This isn't the end. It's the new beginning. With finishing as your new baseline, you've broken the 80% curse. You've seen the invisible wall and walked through it. Now it's time to carry it forward. Into every goal, every habit, every future finish line. Because once you prove to yourself that you can finish, you lose all excuses. The next time resistance whispers, "This is hard," you'll whisper back, "I've been through harder." The next time fear says, "You can't," you'll remind it, "You already did." That's what happens when you finish something that mattered. You gain a memory. And that memory becomes a blueprint. Now we lock it in. Build your finisher identity around 5 anchors. 1. The repeat switch. After every win, don't ask, "What's next?" Ask, "What do I repeat?" Repetition builds reliability. And reliability builds legacy. 2. The cycle review. Every 30 days, review your finish history. What did I finish? What tried to stop me? What systems held up under stress? This builds strategic feedback. 3. The future trigger. Set a calendar event 3 months out. Am I still finishing? Let that serve as a wake-up. Because nothing fades faster than urgency. 4. The identity wall. Put reminders around your space. Finish first. Finishing is what I do. You've done harder. These aren't just words. They're codes. And finally, 5. The finisher standard. Hold others to your new level. Not harshly, but silently. By being the example. Let them see that finishing doesn't require genius. It requires grit. And you have that now. Because finishing isn't something you did. It's something you do. You are now a finisher in motion. But momentum fades unless it's managed. This chapter is about guarding the discipline you've built. About preserving the friction you fought through. Because success doesn't end with the win. It continues through protection. Let's break it down. The biggest threat to consistency? Comfort. The moment the fire cools, The old version of you tries to return. So how do we stay sharp after a win? 1. Introduce friction on purpose. Don't let ease make you soft. Make your goals slightly harder. Slightly scarier. Slightly bigger. Comfort doesn't keep you. Challenge does. 2. Stay close to the pain. Reread your old journal entries. The ones from when you were stuck. The ones that ached. That pain was real. And it built the version of you reading this now. Don't forget it. Honor it. 3. Become a finisher coach to someone else. Teach what you've done. Mentor someone through their wall. Nothing reinforces your standard like being a mirror for someone else's growth. 4. Recommit weekly. Every Sunday, ask, what is my finisher mission this week? Write it. Say it out loud. And then do it. 5. Audit for leaks. Where am I slipping? Where am I excusing delay? Where have I accepted 80% again? This audit keeps your system clean. Because you didn't come this far to let the wall sneak back in. You burned through it. Now protect the fire. You've protected it. Now it's time to scale it. Finishing one thing is powerful. But finishing many? That's transformation. This chapter is about replication. Taking the tools, the mindset, and the finish-first identity, and applying it across every part of your life. This is system-level mastery. Let's talk domains. Fitness. You don't start 5 routines. You finish one. Then another. Business. You don't chase 12 strategies. You execute one to completion. Relationships. You don't show up when it's easy. You follow through when it's not. Creativity. You don't wait for the muse. You ship the work. The finisher identity scales. Because when you believe, I'm someone who always finishes, you don't hesitate anymore. You select. You commit. You endure. Now make it visible. Start a finish tracker. A public board. A physical log. A whiteboard of closures. Let it become your monument. Every tick mark a vow kept. Every row a mindset sealed. Let it stare back at you and say, you are who you said you would be. Finishing doesn't get easier. You just get stronger. And with enough repetitions, you stop fearing the next wall. You start welcoming it. You've broken the wall. You didn't stop at 80%. You rewrote the ending. But let's be honest. This wasn't just about one goal. This was a test. A test of your ability to stay. To endure. To act when it was boring. To believe when the applause went silent. And you passed. That matters. Because the world doesn't reward starters. It rewards finishers. Because finishing is where self-respect lives. It's where your word becomes truth. Anyone can start. Few can stay. Even fewer finish. But you did. So now what? What do you do with this power? You build with it. You let it bleed into your voice. Your posture. Your pace. Your decisions. Because finishing doesn't just change your calendar. It changes your character. You become quieter. Not because you have less to prove, but because you've proven something to yourself. You become faster. Not because of pressure, but because there's no more hesitation. You move forward now, without the burden of wondering if you're capable. You know. Now, the goal is to scale that knowing. Let every new challenge feel different. Not because it's easier, but because you've faced the wall and walked through it. Every finish teaches you the same truth. That your mind is not your master. It's your tool. That discomfort is not a danger. It's a signpost. That resistance is not a warning. It's a doorway. And now you know how to walk through it. Let's close this with one final shift. From finishing something to becoming someone. The version of you that finishes is the version that follows through. The version that doesn't need permission. The version that finds rhythm in repetition. This is who you are now. Not just someone who crossed one finish line, but someone who's made finishing a default. This means, when you start something now, it ends with you winning. When you begin a plan, it ends with results. When you raise your hand, it ends with delivery. No more backpedaling. No more retreat. No more 80% stories left unfinished. And if you ever forget, if the wall ever whispers again, you remind yourself, I've done this before. I finish what I start. I do not leave my power on the table. Because you are no longer waiting. No longer preparing. No longer hoping the right moment arrives. You are doing. You are proving. You are finishing. And that is your edge. So take this series. Take this identity. Take this new rhythm of execution. And run. Run with speed. Run with stillness. Run with self-respect. And when others fall off, when they stop at 80, you don't flinch. You keep going. Because this time, it's different. This time, you finish. And if this message lit something up in you, don't let it stay in your head. Let it echo. Let it ripple. Push pin, drop a comment. What hit hardest? What helped you flip the switch? What wall are you walking through next? We read every single one. Seriously. Direct hit like this video if it helped you cross a mental barrier. Loudspeakers, share it with someone stuck in the last mile. Bell, subscribe for the next step, because this journey is just beginning. No matter the challenge. No matter the noise. You finish now. Every time. No matter what. Let's go.